This is the second in a series on vintage hockey. This week, we'll dig into the data and focus on the team statistics we've collected and explore how NHL hockey has evolved over the last 108 years. To conduct the analyses in this lecture and our newsletter, we curated 108 years worth of team and player data for this vintage hockey series. We combined, cleaned, and transformed the data into a single data set. You can download the dataset that includes team statistics for all 108 seasons as a CSV file using the link here. The data source for this dataset was Hockey Reference. In this lecture, we'll explore three areas: goals, goons, and goaltending. The mean average goals increased and decreased across the 5 eras and was between 2.23 and 3.41 average goals per game. The Great One showed a more significant difference at 3.41. For greater detail, let's look at the data by season. Here you can see dramatic highs and lows early in the early years and original 6, and a steady increase in average goals during the Great One. The overall lifetime average is 3.02 goals per game. Several factors impacted goal scoring, such as rule changes, expansion periods, improvements in player equipment and training, changes in playing style, and overall strategic evolution. For example, World War II impacted the talent pool, making teams less competitive and slowing down offensive output. League expansion, introducing players with new styles of play and goal-scoring ability. Offensive playing styles increased scoring averages, especially in the 80s with new superstars. Rule changes, such as the removal of the 2-line pass rule, stricter penalties for obstruction, smaller goalie equipment, a crackdown on slashing and other penalties, along with an emphasis on speed and offense. Back in the day, enforcers aka Goons were a significant part of the game. They played an important part in the unwritten rules of hockey. If you measure the goonness of the NHL through penalties, then the Great One was not just about Gretzky and a high goal-scoring era, but it was also the era of the enforcer. And the difference was significant, an average of 20.34 per game, or average PIM. Leading into the Great One as a high watermark era, the incidence of penalties were on the rise but have since decreased into the modern era. The variation in average PIM has been influenced by numerous factors, including rule changes, shifts in playing style, officiating, league expansion, and enforcement practices. The early years were marked by a more physical, rough style of play, and the enforcement of rules was inconsistent. In the 1920s, the NHL standardized its rules, and there was a push to limit excessive violence, leading to fewer penalties. During World War II, many star players were enlisted in the military, and less experienced players filled in, which led to fewer games and a dip in penalty minutes. The game became more physical in the 50s, with aggressive checking, fights, and rough play becoming part of the game's culture again. The NHL expansion introduced more rivalries and a greater focus on physical intimidation as teams sought to establish themselves. Further, specific periods in the NHL were marked with teams that were well known for being brutal enforcers. For example, in the mid-70s, penalty minutes had surged to over 14 minutes per game. The introduction of the Philadelphia Flyers' Broad Street Bullies style of play epitomized the era's focus on physical dominance. Today, the NHL has significantly reduced penalties as fighting and physicality have become less central to the game, with player safety and skillful play taking precedence. Save percentage was collected when the NHL launched the box scores in the late 50s, so we don't have a complete view across all 108 years. However, we do have a view from the late 50s until now. With this chart, you can see the steady decline and then an upsurge in the modern era. Dip notwithstanding, the overall trend line indicates that the quality of goaltending on average has increased across the life of the save percentage stat. Arguably, goaltending has come a long way from the early days. Here are a few events that impacted goaltending. Goalie equipment advancements and better techniques have led to higher save percentages. Defensive systems like the neutral zone trap, improved shot blocking, and more structured play have reduced the quality of scoring chances. Specialized goalie training, combined with advanced scouting, has helped goalies stop a higher percentage of shots. All told, you can see that just evaluating 3 aspects of the game, the data shows interesting changes along the way. From rule changes, maturity of sport, new playing styles and players, equipment changes, and so on. And it's not just about the game itself, but there is history around the game, such as World War II, that impacted the nature of how the game evolved. Don't forget to hit the subscribe, like, and notification button. And check out datapunkhockey.com for more great hockey and hockey analytics content.